On June 6, 1944, as Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, German commanders began to notice something unexpected. It was not simply the scale of the landings. It was not the weight of Allied air power. It was not even the overwhelming material superiority facing them. It was the speed, aggression, and persistence of certain Allied troops advancing inland faster than doctrine suggested they should. These soldiers were not the most numerous, nor the most celebrated in wartime headlines. Yet among German officers, they began to acquire a particular reputation. They were called stormtroopers. The irony was unmistakable. These soldiers were not German, they were Canadian. This documentary examines why Nazi Germany came to fear Canadian soldiers, not through legend or exaggeration, but through how Canadian formations fought, adapted, and imposed pressure on the battlefield. By 1944, Nazi Germany was no longer fighting for victory. It was fighting to delay defeat. German strategy in Western Europe emphasized elastic defense, layered positions, and controlled withdrawals. The objective was to absorb Allied attacks, regroup reserves, and restore balance through counteraction. This system depended on predictability. An assault would reach its limit. The defender would reorganize. The line would stabilize, at least temporarily. Against many Allied formations, this rhythm still functioned. Against Canadian units, it increasingly did not. Canada had entered the war early, declaring war in 1939. What followed was the rapid creation of a mass citizen army. Farmers, laborers, clerks, and students became infantrymen, gunners, and tank crews. What mattered was not their civilian origin, but how the force was structured once mobilized. Canadian units were frequently raised on a regional basis and kept together. Soldiers fought beside men they already knew. Losses were not abstract, they were personal and immediate. This produced a distinctive form of cohesion. Units endured pressure longer before disengaging. Withdrawal was delayed. Momentum was preserved even under heavy strain. Training reinforced this behavior. Canadian command culture emphasized intent rather than rigid instruction. Junior leaders were expected to act when communication failed. Non-commissioned officers were trained to solve problems immediately rather than wait for higher authority. This approach reflected necessity. Canada could not rely on unlimited manpower or rapid replacement. Units were expected to complete objectives with available resources and continue forward without extended pause. These characteristics became visible during the Normandy landings. Canada's 3rd Infantry Division landed at Juno Beach on D-Day under intense fire. Concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, artillery, and underwater obstacles inflicted heavy casualties. In some units, losses approached 50% within the first hour. The Canadians adapted, regrouped, and advanced. By the end of the day, they had pushed more than 10 kilometers inland, farther than any other Allied landing force. German commanders took notice. For the individual soldier, Canadian operations were physically and mentally exhausting. Objectives were not endpoints, they were transitions. A captured position became the base for the next advance. Consolidation was compressed. Pressure resumed before fatigue could fully set in. From the German perspective, this was destabilizing. Defensive doctrine assumed pauses, time to redistribute ammunition, time to reorganize command, time to rotate exhausted troops. Against Canadian units, those pauses often did not occur. The absence of relief became a psychological burden. What should have been recovery became anticipation. The battle felt continuous rather than episodic. The front did not feel controlled. It felt relentless. Canadian soldiers did not possess secret weapons or unique technology. They fought with standard Allied equipment, rifles, light machine guns, mortars, artillery, and armor support when available. What distinguished their effectiveness was integration. Infantry fire fixed defenders in place. Mortar teams responded rapidly to resistance without waiting for centralized approval. Artillery fire was adjusted continuously, allowing pressure to resume before German units could reorganize. Armor operated in close cooperation with infantry. Tanks suppressed strong points and enabled movement, but they did not replace infantry momentum. When armor was delayed or unavailable, infantry operations continued regardless. Environmental conditions were treated in the same way. Night did not halt operations. Reduced visibility limited German observation and diminished long-range fire advantages. Rain, mud, and cold altered movement, but did not end attacks. German defenders trained to expect operational pauses under such conditions instead encountered renewed contact. The battle did not sleep. This pattern intensified during the Normandy campaign. Canadian units were assigned some of the most demanding objectives, including prolonged urban fighting around Caen. The city, expected to fall within days, resisted for more than a month. Canadian and British forces faced determined defenders, including Waffen-SS units, in close-range combat under constant artillery fire. Momentum was maintained through adaptation rather than brute force. The same approach appeared again during the Falaise Pocket in August 1944. Canadian forces attacked from the north as Allied formations closed around retreating German armies. Losses were heavy, resistance was fierce. The Canadians pressed forward regardless, sealing escape routes, holding critical ground, and contributing decisively to the collapse of German forces in Normandy. Later in the year, the pattern reached its most severe expression in the Scheldt estuary. Flooded terrain, narrow dikes, exposed causeways, and limited vehicle access favored defense. German planners expected delay. Canadian units advanced anyway. They reduced reliance on vehicles. They adapted formations. They moved through water and mud under fire. Progress was slow and costly, but it did not stop. German doctrine required time. The Canadians denied it. This experience was intensified by memory. Many German officers in 1944 had been shaped by the First World War or trained by those who were. The term stormtrooper carried specific meaning. Elite assault units trained for speed, shock, and close combat. When German reports began applying the same label to Canadian soldiers, it was not flattery. It was recognition. Yet the same troops were remembered very differently by civilians. In the Netherlands, Canadian forces arrived as liberators. Food followed closely behind advancing formations. Discipline was maintained. Starvation ended. Streets were named after Canadian units. Commemorations endured. For German troops, Canadian formations represented relentless pressure. For civilians, they represented survival. The fear German soldiers described was not myth. It emerged from repeated encounters with a way of fighting that compressed battle phases, denied recovery, and treated obstacles as conditions rather than stopping points. Canadian soldiers were not feared because they were uniquely brutal. They were feared because, once committed, they did not disengage easily. They adapted faster than doctrine could respond. They continued when logic suggested a pause. In a war increasingly defined by machines and mass logistics, Canadian formations imposed something more difficult to neutralize: relentless human pressure applied without interruption. That was what Nazi Germany feared.